My husband wants us to legally adopt his best friend's orphaned child, but the child resents my very existence, and I am forced to choose between my sanity and my marriage. There is a very thin, dangerous line between unconditional love and absolute emotional martyrdom, and for the past 6 months, I have been forced to walk it every single day in my own home. When my husband's lifelong best friend Marcus tragically passed away in a car accident half a year ago, he left behind his 10-year-old son, Julian, without consulting me, without considering the delicate peace of our household. My husband, Tom, brought Julian into our lives with a promise that we would legally adopt him. I wanted to be the compassionate wife. I wanted to heal a grieving child. But Julian does not see me as a savior. He looks at me with a quiet, burning resentment that has slowly dismantled my peace, my home, and my mental sanity. Yesterday, Tom handed me the final legal adoption papers, expecting me to sign away the rest of my life. But after what Julian whispered to me when Tom left the room, I realized that signing these papers won't save a grieving boy. It will permanently destroy my marriage. The sound of a door clicking shut in an empty house shouldn't feel like a declaration of war, but in my home it does. My name is Elena. I am a 41-year-old high school guidance counselor, a profession that has spent nearly 2 decades teaching me how to navigate the complex, fragile psyches of teenagers and children. I pride myself on patience. I pride myself on structure, calm communication, and rational empathy. My husband, Tom, and I have been married for 12 beautiful, stable years. We made the conscious, deliberate choice early in our marriage not to have biological children, choosing instead to focus on our careers, our travels, and a quiet, deeply connected life together in our suburban home just outside of Chicago. Our life had a beautiful, predictable rhythm until 6 months ago. It was a Tuesday evening when the phone call came. Tom's best friend since the 3rd grade, Marcus, a man who was more like a brother to Tom than blood ever could be, had been killed instantly by a distracted driver on the interstate. Marcus was a single father. His wife had passed away when their son Julian was just a toddler. There was no extended family, no grandparents, no aunts or uncles. There was only Julian, a quiet, intensely observant 10-year-old boy who suddenly found himself entirely alone in the world. I remember the night Tom brought Julian to our house. Tom's eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders hunched under the crushing weight of a grief he didn't know how to carry. Julian stood beside him, clutching a single battered duffel bag, his face completely pale and expressionless. "He's staying with us, Elena," Tom had whispered to me in the hallway while Julian sat stiffly on our living room sofa. "Just until we figure out the temporary guardianship." I couldn't let him go into the system. Marcus would have done the same for me. "Of course," I had said immediately, wrapping my arms around my grieving husband. "He stays here. We will give him all the time and space he needs." But temporary is a word that easily stretches when grief is involved. Within 3 months, the temporary arrangement began to harden into a permanent reality. Tom didn't just want to be Julian's guardian. He wanted to fulfill a silent, unwritten vow to his deceased friend. He wanted us to legally adopt Julian. He wanted us to become a family. The problem, however, wasn't the logistical change or the financial responsibility. The problem was Julian. From the very first week, Julian made it intensely clear that my presence in this house was a grievance. He did not cry in front of us. He did not throw tantrums or break objects. Instead, he deployed a cold, systematic passive resistance that was terrifyingly mature for a 10-year-old. If I cooked dinner, he would sit at the table, stare at the plate with an expression of deep, silent disgust, and wait until Tom noticed. "Julian, buddy, you need to eat your chicken," Tom would say gently, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Julian would look up at Tom, his eyes instantly shifting into a soft, vulnerable puppy dog gaze. "I'm sorry, Uncle Tom. It's just my dad always used to season it with rosemary, and the smell of this, it just makes my stomach hurt. Can I just have a piece of bread?" Tom would immediately shoot me a look of deep, sorrowful reprimand, as if I had intentionally poisoned the meal by not knowing the exact culinary habits of a dead man. "Elena, maybe next time we can avoid the heavy seasoning? He's sensitive right now." "I use standard salt and pepper, Tom," I would say smoothly, keeping my voice entirely neutral, refusing to let the irritation show. Let's just make it easier for him, okay?" Tom would sigh, pushing his own plate away. This became the daily atmospheric density of my life. Julian never spoke to me unless Tom was in the room. If I tried to sit with him in the living room to help him with his homework while Tom was at work, Julian would quietly pack up his books, stand up, and walk to his bedroom, closing the door firmly behind him. I tried every clinical strategy I knew. I tried giving him space. I tried offering low-pressure activities. I tried validating his grief. One afternoon, 3 months into his stay, I sat outside his bedroom door after he had locked himself away following a minor disagreement about his laundry. "Julian," I said softly, leaning my head against the painted wood, "I know I am not your mother. I know I will never replace your father, and I don't want to. But I am a safe person here. If you are angry, or if you just want to yell at someone, you can yell at me. I can handle it." There was a long, suffocating silence from inside the room. Then the lock clicked and the door opened an inch. Julian looked out at me, his small face completely cold, devoid of the childish innocence he showed his uncle Tom. "I don't want to yell at you," Julian whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I just want you to stop pretending you care about me. You just want Uncle Tom to smile again so you can have your old life back. But as long as I am here, you're never getting it back." Before I could process the sheer, targeted malice of that statement, he closed the door again, leaving me kneeling on the hallway carpet, my professional confidence completely shattered by a 10-year-old's insight. The real erosion of my marriage began when Tom started interpreting my emotional exhaustion as a lack of compassion. On a rainy Saturday in the 5th month of Julian's stay, Tom had organized a trip to a local baseball game, something he and Marcus used to do with Julian every summer. I had spent the entire week managing a heavy caseload of grieving students at my school, and my mental battery was entirely in the red. I needed a quiet Saturday at home to simply breathe, to read, and to recalibrate my own nervous system. When Tom came downstairs in his team jersey, he found me sitting on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea and a book. "You're not dressed yet?" Tom asked, his brow furrowing as he checked his watch. "The gates open in an hour, Elena. We need to leave." "Tom, we talked about this on Thursday," I said gently, setting my teacup down on the side table. "I told you I was going to sit this one out. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you and Julian to have some male bonding time, to remember Marcus together. My presence might actually make him feel constrained." Tom's face hardened in a way I had rarely seen in our 12 years together. He stepped out onto the porch, closing the screen door behind him so Julian wouldn't hear from the living room. "Constrained, Elena? Or are you just opting out because you don't want to do the hard work of being a parent?" Tom's voice was a sharp, accusatory whisper. I felt a sudden, hot flash of defensive anger rise in my chest, but I forced my voice to remain low and steady. "That is incredibly unfair, Tom. I have spent the last 5 months restructuring our entire financial budget, moving my home office into a smaller corner so Julian could have the large bedroom, and constantly adjusting my cooking, my schedule, and my volume to accommodate his grief. I am not opting out. I am preserving my own sanity so I can continue to support you." "Support me?" Tom scoffed, running a hand through his hair, looking utterly spent. "Elena, he is an orphan. He lost his father. His entire world is gone. And every time I try to bring him closer to us, I feel this invisible wall from you. You look at him like he's a clinical case study from your school, not a little boy who needs a mother." "He doesn't want a mother, Tom." "Especially not me," I said, my voice rising slightly before I caught myself. "He has explicitly told me that he resents me. He does not want me in his life. When you are not looking, his behavior shifts entirely. He is using your guilt over Marcus to drive a wedge between us." Tom stared at me, his eyes filled with a deep, disappointing coldness. "He's 10 years old, Elena. The fact that you are accusing a grieving 10-year-old child of calculated manipulation tells me everything I need to know about where your head is at. Marcus was my brother. If I don't adopt this boy, I am abandoning the only legacy my best friend left behind. If you can't find it in your heart to love him, then you're not the woman I thought I married." The words felt like a physical blow to my sternum. "You're not the woman I thought I married." It was the classic trap of the secondary caregiver. Because I was the one maintaining the boundaries, I was labeled the villain. Before I could answer, the screen door opened, and Julian stepped out onto the porch. He was wearing an oversized baseball cap that used to belong to his father, looking small, fragile, and utterly heartbroken. He looked at Tom, then shot a brief, completely readable look of cold satisfaction at me, before looking back down at his sneakers. "Uncle Tom?" Julian mumbled, his voice trembling slightly. "Is Aunt Elena mad at us? If she doesn't want us to go, we can stay home. I don't want to cause an argument." Tom immediately knelt down in front of the boy, his expression softening into pure, unadulterated protectiveness. "No, buddy, no one is mad. Aunt Elena just has some work to finish up here. You and I are going to have a great time at the game, okay? Let's go get the car." As I watched Tom lead Julian down the driveway, the boy turned his head slightly over his shoulder. Away from Tom's sight, he looked straight at me, his small mouth curving into a slow, chilling smile of absolute victory. He had successfully turned my need for a basic mental health boundary into an act of maternal rejection in my husband's eyes. The final crisis arrived yesterday evening, and it brought the entire house of cards crashing down. Tom had been working with a family lawyer for weeks to finalize the legal adoption paperwork. He brought the thick manila envelope home last night, setting it down on the kitchen island with a sense of solemn triumph. "This is it." "Elena," Tom said, his voice quiet but filled with a deep emotional gravity as he looked at me across the court's counter. "Once we both sign these, the court date will be set for next month. Julian will legally be our son. We can finally start moving forward as a real family." I looked at the documents. The bold lettering at the top read, "Petition for co-adoption of a minor child." It felt like a death warrant for my personal autonomy. I knew that the moment my signature touched that paper, my legal, moral, and emotional responsibility to a child who despised me would be sealed forever. If my marriage broke under the strain later, I would still be legally bound to a child I could not reach. "Tom," I said, my voice steady but heavy with a profound sorrow, "I need 24 hours to read through these. We cannot rush into a lifelong legal commitment when the emotional foundation in this house is still so deeply fractured." Tom's face fell, the anger returning instantly to his eyes. "Fractured? It's fractured because you refuse to heal it, Elena. I'm going to the hardware store to pick up some paint for Julian's room. When I get back, I hope you're ready to be my partner in this." He turned and walked out the front door, slamming it behind him. The house fell into that heavy, suffocating silence that had become our daily baseline. I stood in the kitchen, my hand resting on the manila envelope, my chest tight with a rising sense of panic. Suddenly, I heard the soft scuff of socks on the hardwood floor. I turned around to find Julian standing at the entrance of the kitchen. He didn't have his baseball cap on. His eyes looked sharp, mature, and entirely empty of the vulnerability he traded in when Tom was home. He walked over to the kitchen island, stood directly across from me, and looked down at the adoption papers. "You're not going to sign them, are you?" Julian asked, his voice entirely flat, devoid of any childish inflection. "Julian," I said, maintaining my professional calm, though my heart was racing. "This is a decision between your Uncle Tom and me. It is about what is best for your future." Julian let out a short, dry laugh that sounded uncomfortably like an adult's. My future? My future was destroyed when my dad died in that car. You think I want to be your son? You think I want to live in this stupid, quiet house with your books and your rules? He leaned forward across the counter, his small fingers gripping the edge of the quartz, his gaze locking onto mine with a chilling intensity. "Let me tell you what's going to happen, Elena. If you sign those papers, I am going to make every single day of your life a living hell. I will make sure Tom thinks you are ignoring me. I will make sure the school thinks you are mistreating me. And I will make sure Tom resents you more every single morning he wakes up. And if you don't sign them, Tom will leave you anyway because he cares more about keeping his promise to my dad than he cares about you." I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. The sheer, calculated psychological venom coming from this 10-year-old boy was staggering. He wasn't just a grieving child. He was a child who had realized that his grief gave him absolute power over an adult's guilt, and he was using that power to burn down my life. "Why do you hate me this much, Julian?" I whispered, my voice cracking slightly. "I have done nothing but try to give you a safe place to land." "Because you're alive," Julian hissed, his eyes filling with a sudden, vicious wave of genuine, raw tears. "You're alive, and you have a perfect life, and my dad is rotting in the ground. Uncle Tom belongs to my dad, not to you. If I can't have my family, I'm going to make sure you lose yours." He turned around and walked back down the hallway, leaving me alone in the kitchen, staring at the adoption papers, the chilling echo of his ultimatum ringing in my ears. I was trapped in the ultimate psychological checkmate. Sign the papers and destroy my sanity from within, or refuse to sign them and let my marriage shatter from the outside.